Hello, Philippines, and welcome to the World News Jam right here on DZRJ and RJ TV. My name is Lecain, and we are talking today about stories going on around the world, some of the most interesting stuff that happened this week that I believe. And with me again this week is Melissa Ruchera. Rusella.
Melissa Racela.
Racela.
Good evening. Hello, Eric.
I love botching your name as much as possible. Good evening. It's so happy to have you here because I know that you have been a little bit under the weather, but you are there in your fabulous looking headphones and microphone. So I feel like I'm ready to order on Shopee. So you can take my order there. Now, even though you may be feeling a little bit under the weather, you told me that you are about to do an Ironman, which is the, I believe you swim and then you bike and then you run.
Yeah, in Davao on March 26th.
On March 26th. And you train, you train for, I guess, for months to get prepared for something like that.
I started training last month, but I've been active all throughout the year.
You know, do you ever, when you go to like parties or events or anything like that, do you start out conversations by going, you know, I'm doing an Ironman, and then you kind of flex your triceps a little bit? And that's what I would do.
People in parties don't really like hearing those things.
You know,
They
when
don't
I was
get it.
when I was in junior high school, I think 1976, I ran the mile in 4 minutes and 44 seconds and broke the town record for the mile in my tiny little town that I came from. And now it is 2023. I continue to tell that story any chance I get.
That's very, very fast.
You know, so that never happened again, by the way. That was only one time. It was a one-time thing only. But speaking about things that I'm good at, there is a big story that came out this week that caught my attention. Very important story, I think, for a lot of people, is that January 30th, which is tomorrow, the Oreo's Cookie Company will be releasing a new Oreo cookie. It is called the Most Oreo, and it is an Oreo cookie with an Oreo cookie in it.
How's that? It's like a cookies and cream inside the Oreo.
Yes. So it's a big wad of cream inside the cookies, and in the cream is Oreo cookies in the cream. So they're able to get maximum amount of cookie in the cookie, and you can pre-order a bag of them off the website, off the Oreoverse, which is very much like the metaverse, but it's called the Oreoverse. And Martha Stewart will be there to help them to push their cookies. I don't know if you remember, for those out there who don't know Martha Stewart, she is the woman on television that teaches you to fix up your house and your garden and how to cook. And she went to jail for tax evasion, if I remember right. But she'll be there helping sell the Super Oreo cookie, which is coming out
It sounds
tomorrow.
good.
Yes. So for me, I may not be very good at doing Ironmans, but I can't wait for the Oreo cookie to come out. But so, by the way, do you like Oreo cookies?
I love Oreo cookies.
Oh, gosh.
Especially the double stuffed one.
Oh, double stuffs. Don't get me started. Now, you know, usually we do, Melissa and I will talk about things going on around the world. And today, we're going to start the show out by talking about some things that caught my attention in the international news. Because when the Philippines comes up in the international news, I usually try and talk about it at the beginning of the show. And they made it this week in that old case that the International Criminal Court had against the Duterte administration. It was on the back burner for a while, and it has come off the back burner. And this is regards to the human rights violations, you know, the previous administration was accused of. Now, originally, the Philippines had asked the ICC to let them handle it internally. However, the ICC has now said the Philippine government is not being diligent enough, and they had hoped that they would investigate it more. So a judge on the Hague court has authorized the Office of Prosecutor to continue its case against Duterte. According to the judge, the Philippines has failed its attempt to investigate the crime against humanity perpetuated by the former president, allegedly. Now, I'm sure that many people out there are now saying, well, wait a minute. Didn't Duterte suspend the country's membership into the International Criminal Court? And he did. However, for all that time that the Philippines was a member of the ICC, they now have jurisdiction over the Philippines, which...
So we are back.
I'm not really sure what that means.
Suspension.
Yeah. I mean, Duterte got out of the criminal court, so, they wouldn't be able to investigate. But now they turned it over, to the Philippines to do it. And this case goes back to when Duterte was mayor, when he was mayor in 2011. It reaches all the way to 2019. So now the Philippine government has continued to say that the court no longer has jurisdiction over them. So the court says they do. The Philippines says we can do our own investigations, which according to the International Court is not really much of an investigation according to them.
Looks like we're not capable of doing our own investigation.
Yeah. So, in fact, they're calling it a tokenistic approach. I love that word, tokenistic approach to this. And so the ICC says that they are going to go back to continuing their investigation. So should the Philippine government just say, okay, all right, go ahead, investigate, or should they continue to fight against the ICC?
Wait, who's to say that yes, we need to turn it over to the ICC? Who decides?
Well, I don't think anyone really decides. I mean, the ICC is going to do it whether they decide to do it or not. I mean, so if the Philippines doesn't want to be cooperative, they don't have to be, but they're going to continue to investigate this anyway. And they're going to gather up all the witnesses and gather up all the testimony and all the things from all the families and so forth, whether the Philippine likes it or not. And then they're going to render a verdict. And then what does that even mean? I mean, let's just say, for instance, they find Duterte guilty of crimes against humanity. What is that? So then what?
What's the punishment?
What's the punishment? I mean, are they going to ask the Philippine government to punish him? I mean, I think that's all they could really do, I think. I mean, of course, Duterte will have problems traveling, but I don't think that bothers him that much. So it's just, it will give a chance, for the people who may have lost loved ones in the war on drugs, whatever, to have their say in court. But I don't know what the end to this is.
I guess we have to look at what the ICC did with other countries and what the outcomes were.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thing to look up to see if there has been other cases similar to this. Nothing that jars my mind recently, that anything that happened like what happened, in the Philippines. I mean, people go back and they look at World War II and all these kind of things.
Yeah.
But, that's very hard to make comparisons like that. So I don't know who we could make a comparison with. There's certain African countries that they went to. I don't know. But I just, it's one of those things that made the international news. And I just wanted to bring it up because I thought it was somewhat interesting as how they're going to proceed. Now, there was another Philippine story that was in the news about something that happened in Kuwait.
A domestic helper was abused, raped, impregnated, and then she was killed.
Yeah, she was killed, and then they burned her out in the desert. I mean, it was a really gruesome
actually,
stuff.
what happened was the 17-year-old son, I think, of the employer.
Yes.
Who raped her and then got her pregnant, and then brought her to the desert, ran over her body twice, and then burnt her body.
Yes, and all this is, of course we have to say allegedly, because they have
Allegedly,
they have
yeah.
they have arrested him. They've done, the Kuwaitis have gone quickly in and arrested him, and he is a Kuwaiti citizen, so I can't imagine of a very prominent family. So I'm not sure what will happen, but at least that they've done that. At least they've arrested this guy, and when you hear about stuff like this, for me, I got to think back, was it 2018? A woman was killed and stuffed in the freezer. I can't remember was that in Kuwait?
I think that was also in Kuwait.
Yeah, I think so. And Duterte at that time put a ban on all OFWs going to Kuwait. And then in 2019, a maid was murdered. And then another one was tortured to death. And then they came up with an agreement, and the ban was lifted, especially after the woman that tortured the woman that tortured the other woman, and they hanged her. So the Philippines was like, okay. And then they lifted it. And so this continues to keep happening to OFWs. And what is the Philippines going to have to do about stuff like this?
Yeah, I wonder if, the accountability of the agency, they need to probably tighten the law about the agency, because they're always washing their hands off of the cases.
Yeah, I don't know how that they would be able to pick the goods from the bads in a place like Kuwait, where a lot of times servants are mistreated on a regular basis. So I don't know, what to do. At least the government needs to step in and make some kind of deal with the Kuwaitis to make the punishments much harsher for Kuwaitis who tend to abuse their maids, or make some kind of group in Kuwait that Filipinos can go to if they feel like they're being abused, something like that, because this can't continue. The stories that are coming out are just, horrific. Things that are going on against the Filipinos there.
Yeah, they need to have a cooperative of agencies, probably, right? All the agencies can group together, and then
I know. They need to make a deal. They have to get some kind of deal between the governments. And I think under Duterte was like, okay, we're not going to send any more OFWs there. And so they made a deal with Duterte. But then, then another person gets murdered. So, they need to make some very, very strict rules for sending OFWs over there to the Middle East before this happens again. Because our number one export is our manpower. Is people. Yeah, the Philippines gets 35% of their GDP from people. So the Philippines needs this, and for sure, Kuwait and Qatar and Saudi Arabia, they need the Philippines as well. So I hope they can come to some kind of agreement, because this, like I said, this can't continue. We can't. It's one thing for somebody to get killed, but all the murders seem to be, these horrible stories of poor Filipinos and supposedly this woman that was just killed, she had talked to her family just before this happened and said she's having problems with the son.
Yeah. So tragic.
Yeah. The news said that she was indeed pregnant. And so, I see the writing on the wall here and hope that they can do something as opposed to just, sweep it under the rug and let's just continue. But let's, this reminds me of another story that I wanted to get into before we get into U.S. politics, which we always talk about. I'm sure most Filipinos are out there, they can't wait for me to talk about U.S. politics. But I wanted to talk about this age-old story that's going on in the U.S. right now. And this kind of leads from the story we just talked about. And it's gotten to the point where it's not even big news in the U.S. anymore. And this is mass shootings. And I know, I talk about it all the time. Every year, I ask the same question: when is the U.S. going to follow most other nations in the world to fix their gun laws? But this year, 2023, it's just different. there seems to be more shootings in just this month of January
we're not even
than we're
done
used
yet
to.
with January.
We're not through January. There's been 39 mass shootings as of the middle of last week in the United States in the last month of January. And we're not even done with January. I don't know if one happened today.
It's so crazy.
And a mass shooting, in case you don't know, it's when 4 people or more are shot with a gun. In fact, on January 1st, there were 6 mass shootings in a single day in the United States.
Oh my God.
Anyway, so far, the largest mass shooting of the year happened just this past week in Monterey Park, California. And that's where a gunman shot and killed 11 people, injuring 9 other people, and they in an Asian neighborhood. So I thought this would be an interesting story to bring. And this just came hours after another shooting in California where 7 people died. So, and just before another one that left 6 people dead, including a 17-year-old mother and her 6-month-old baby. I mean, these things just keep getting worse and worse. And let me ask you something. So the Pew Research Center, what's the big research center there in the United States? They did one of those studies, and they said that 48% of Americans think gun violence is a big problem.
Okay.
48%. So what do the other 52% think?
52% they think it's okay.
It's not a problem. It's not that bad. Between I wrote down some statistics really. Between 2010 and 2020, gun deaths by suicide has gone up 43%. And over the last 2 years, suicides are up by 10% in just those years. So, and another one, from 2019 to 2020, gun homicides are up 46%. Now, the reason I think that all these homicides and suicides are going up, and people say it's because of the people, it's because of mental problems. Maybe it's because of the guns. If people did not have guns, I mean, how many times have I been really depressed? I'm like, oh, I'm going to kill myself. You know, she left me. I'm going to kill myself. But I don't have a gun. So I have to just sit there and cry. But if I had a gun, who knows? I mean, I don't know if I would do that. But I mean, I think a lot of people, they get emotionally involved in something, or they have an argument with their girlfriend and they're young and there's a gun and they pull out the gun and they shoot them, and then they're like, oh my God, I shot her, so I'm just going to go to my local elementary school and shoot everybody since I'm going to go to jail anyway.
Like I really don't get it how people just like tick off and then switch off, or what's the term, just go around and shooting kids. Do you know the reason why they do it? Just because they're depressed? Why not just kill themselves? I mean,
yeah. I mean, I'm not saying kill yourself,
it's not okay,
but I'm saying instead of killing children, if you have a choice between the children and yourself, maybe kill yourself. I think a lot of people, especially young people, and this is happening in the United States now all the time. People go, oh, it's mental illness. Man, we've been mentally ill forever. We just didn't have as many guns before. So, yeah, okay, there's, these young boys, especially young white men, and they're mad and they get a gun in their hand and they're like, okay, this is it. I'm going to go out like on, blazing. I'm going to shoot up, this store and kill as many people as had it. I'm going to kill myself and I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory. But if they did not have a military assault rifle, they wouldn't be able to do that. Let's say they had a knife. Well, you could do a lot of damage with a knife, but you can't kill 11 people.
Yeah.
You may be able to get a couple people off, but it's hard. But with a military gun, a gun that you can just spray a room with bullets, even if there are guards, even if there are people there with guns, it's hard to get around a guy that has, some kind of MK weapon. So I think I don't understand why we have those weapons in the United States. Why is it in the rest of the world they don't have them, but in the United States?
Why is it so accessible in the U.S.?
Why can an 18-year-old go into a store and buy one of those things? So
maybe because of the video games.
I don't know. We can go out and we can blame it on everything. We can blame it on video games. But I mean, I can tell you right now that in England and most of Europe, they play the same video games.
Okay.
And how many mass shootings are there in Europe? How many were in London last year, in the last 10 years? Find any place in the world. I mean, they play video games everywhere. And, you know, I just don't see it as much as I do in the United States. But anyway, I just had to throw that in because it happened last week. And I just, one of those things that makes me do a face plant. I go, oh,
no, not again.
So, but anyway, one of the biggest news stories, let's get off to some funny stuff here in U.S. politics before we get on to the rest of the world. It's based on the new Netflix riveting drama about classified documents found in the U.S. Wait a minute. Did I say Netflix? I meant real life. So they're having a big problem with this. Of course, the first guy, we've been talking about this for weeks, Donald Trump. He took home over 300 documents. You remember some of them were super classified. And then right away, he took some of them to the National Archives, but he took very few, and the National Archives were like, where's the rest? And then they subpoenaed him, and then he wouldn't return them. And then they visited him, and then they asked him in person, can you please give back the documents? He wouldn't give back the documents. One of his lawyers wrote a letter saying he gave back everything, which was a total lie. And so finally, they sent in the FBI, and they raided his house, and they took him. There you go. Now, jump ahead. A couple of months, Joe Biden was clearing out one of his rooms in his office, and they found a few pages marked classified. Now, there are different levels of classification, very classified, and maybe you had a conversation with somebody and it was written on a piece of paper, it's that kind of stuff. So they went ahead and checked his home, and they found some other pages there. The Biden people contacted the National Archives on the same day and turned over all the documents. So, and all these go back to when Biden was vice president with Barack Obama. So he did not know he had these documents. The National Archives did not know he has these documents. So I don't know how important they were because nobody seemed to know about them until they found them. So the Republicans, if you remember, Melissa, went crazy on this. And they say, see, there's a double standard. Why are you persecuting Donald Trump and thinking of indicting him, where here's Joe Biden, he's done exactly the same thing, which I've said before, it's not exactly the same thing. One had 300 documents. Anyway, and the ones that they found in Donald Trump's, a lot of them were marked top secret. Anyway, even Mike Pence, the old vice president, got in on this, and he said, well, Biden should not have classified materials and, blah, blah, blah. They should, go in and raid his home. And Donald Trump was saying, yes, they should raid the Biden home as well as the White House, which, of course, the White House is where they keep the secret documents. So that was insane. But anyway, this week, they found some more secret documents, some more classified documents, except they found them in Mike Pence's house.
Okay. More circus drama.
So now we got your Biden, we got your Pence, we got your Trump. They all got classified documents. Now Pence said that he did not purposely take these documents. It was an accident. So the Democrats are now going, see, Biden.
So wait a minute. So Donald Trump brings some top secret documents, and then Biden says something about it, and then now Pence says something about it, and then we find documents in all of their homes. All of their homes.
So. Okay. Trump is saying Biden shouldn't have documents. Pence is saying it. Now Pence has got documents. Now Trump is saying it's okay that Pence had documents, but not Biden. So here we go with the merry-go-round. And, the thing is, this is not that big a deal, really. I know a lot of people are going to, what are you saying, Eric? If you find a classified document on your stuff, you call up the archives and you turn it in. That's what Biden did. That's what Pence did. That is not what Donald Trump did. Donald Trump moved the documents out of the room that they knew that he had them in to hide them in another room until eventually the FBI had to come in and raid the entire house and take the documents where he put them. So there's a big difference in what Pence did and what Biden did. And I think now that Pence has found classified documents in his place, it shows that Biden and Pence are pretty much the same, but not really Donald Trump.
Okay. Maybe they're just old and they just keep forgetting where they put stuff.
Here's what I got to ask you. Okay, so have you ever been fired? I mean, I've been fired before or let go unintentionally, whatever, let go. Man, they escort you to the door that day, all your stuff, they make sure that you don't take anything. These guys, when they lose an election, they have from November 6th to January to get out.
Clean
to clean up and get out.
Leave.
So, I mean, I understand that, Donald Trump probably took these things on purpose. But I mean, I'm just thinking, these guys, you have a chance to go through all the boxes and everything. I still, it seems like there should be, in the United States, there should be some kind of system maybe to check the boxes of papers before they take it out. Anyway, that's just me. But it's more excitement, but it couldn't be any more exciting, Melissa, than the fact that Donald Trump is now back on Facebook.
Yeah. Facebook and Instagram.
He is
and also
back.
Twitter soon.
I think he's already been lifted from Twitter.
Okay.
He hasn't gone back and tweeted yet because he has an exclusivity agreement with that Truth Social thing that he's on now. So I don't know what all that means, but anyway, after having a 2-year ban on Facebook for inciting an insurrection, they're letting Trump back in, hoping that he has learned his lesson.
Okay.
So, it's like a guy.
He doesn't pose a threat anymore to society or something.
It's like when you arrest an arsonist and then he goes back to work in the match factory. So, of course, Donald Trump came out and goes, well, Facebook, they lost a fortune because they kicked him out off the platform, and they need me back. So that's why they're inviting him back. So that's what Donald Trump is saying. But they are saying that they have put guardrails on now, and that Trump cannot do the things that he did before because of the guardrails that they have put on. I'm not exactly sure what those guardrails will entail.
He's under parole.
He's on parole. Now, if I know Donald Trump, and I think that I know him pretty well, I think if he's on, if he can't put out certain incendiary comments on Facebook, I think that will last about an hour. Once he goes back on Facebook,
he's gonna get sick.
I don't think he's going to last very much longer, because if you've noticed, Donald Trump got suspended for lying and propagating an insurrection and so forth. Trump is still saying the same stuff. He hasn't changed anything. He's still saying that the election was stolen from him, that he was cheated, that the insurrection was not an insurrection. So I just can't imagine that this is going to make too much of a difference. But let the Facebook people, and the Facebook people did lose a lot of money. I don't think it was because of Trump, but I mean, I know a lot of people went on because they like to read his stuff. But speaking of, saying things that might not be true, good old our friend George Santos is back in the news again.
Your favorite guy.
He is now my favorite guy. Now, before we were talking about George Santos's lies, but the squeeze is on because, he may be the biggest liar ever in U.S. Congress history. And that's a pretty high bar. That's a pretty high bar. Because he lied about his schools and finances, being a volleyball store, that his mother died in the World Trade Center, that he's Jewish, that he's gay, maybe, that he worked in a fancy equity firm, that he started a charity group to help sick animals. Someone mugged him and stole his shoes. He said he never dressed up like a woman. But, of course, we have videotape of him dressing up like a woman. But none of that is going to get you thrown out of the Republican Party, because they don't care how much you lie as long as you are in Congress, you're a Republican, and you vote the way they want you to vote. So they don't care that he has 4 different names. That's okay. But he has a problem now. And it's not about lying. It's about a $700,000 loan that he gave his own campaign. So when you give yourself a loan in a campaign, that's okay. but we need to know where the money came from. And where did he get $700,000 if he only made $55,000 a year in 2019? So the problem that we think, now he has gone back and made a change because of this has all come out. He made a change on his application for a campaign, and he had to mark out that he gave himself money. So if he didn't give himself money, where did it come from? You can loan yourself money, but someone else cannot unless they say who they are. You have to say, we have certain campaign finance laws. So China and Iran and Russia cannot
all the way there.
Cannot give you money for your campaign because, of course, if they could, the Chinese would just want to put in, they would give whatever money they could to put in who they wanted, especially in a place like the Congress. So where did that money come from? And this is something that George is going to have to explain.
So up to now, it's a mystery.
Yeah, I mean, George has said that he would give us the information of where this came from in 2 days. And that was 3 weeks ago? Wait a minute.
Oh.
So that's a problem for him. And there's another issue that he's having too, and this is not to do with, it might have, well, it's a lie in a way, but so when you're in your campaign, you can buy stuff for $200 or less and not have to say where the money came from. Well, George has a list of things that he purchased during his campaign for $199.99.
Okay.
Yes.
Clever.
How is it possible that all the restaurants you eat at, everything you order comes up to $199.99? So he's going to have to explain all the fancy hotels that he ate at and all the stuff that's going on in George's life. Now, I think eventually George is going to crash and burn, and we probably never heard from him. But speaking of people that have crashed and burned, I wanted to talk to you about this person. Because, you know, we were talking about before, you know, women who do very, very well in life. And Elizabeth Holmes, who I believe you know, she did very well in the tech world. She made billions of dollars. And believe me, that is hard for a woman to do in that business.
And at a very young age, too.
And at a very young age. People were calling her the next Steve Jobs. Do you know what it was? The thing was that she invented that made her so famous?
Yes, it's a blood testing where you just prick your finger and then that's it. You don't need vials of blood. And
it can tell you if you have cancer. It is amazing.
It's an amazing blood testing.
Amazing, incredible procedure that she came up with for blood testing. Theranos, it was worth $9 billion. It's what, you know, they had this machine. They called it the Edison machine. The Edison machine. And it could do impossible things. And the reason it could do impossible things is because it couldn't do those things.
But other machines were doing it for them.
Yes. It was a fraud. And they knew it was a fraud. They perpetuated the fraud. They told doctors and patients and investors that they had this thing that could do all these things, and it didn't. So, you know, inside the box, when they opened it up, there was a monkey running on a wheel. I mean, you know, that's not what it was. But anyway, so we were going to get to this last week. It actually happened just the week before. The jurors found her guilty on 4 counts of fraud. She seems remorseful. She was crying and everything as she read her final statement. But the judge said, you know, a failure is normal in any business, but a failure like this by fraud, where you intentionally defrauded investors and patients who had cancer.
She made a mockery out of the medical.
I know. I mean, I feel, you know, I feel bad for her, but not really. Anyway, the prosecutors wanted 15 years and an $800 million fine, but she got 11 years. Mostly will have to pay probably around $120 million. But for someone who was on the top of the world, at one time, she was deemed the youngest billionaire, or one of the youngest female billionaire. And now they say that she is worth, according to Forbes, nothing.
Zero.
She is worth zero now. So she will join the club. They were putting her in the club with Mark Zuckerberg and Warren Buffett. Her name was being mentioned with these guys. And now, she's going to be mentioned with that Bankman-Fried guy.
I think she's in the same level as your favorite guy in terms of, they get away with things because they talk well. They present themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how someone could continue a fraud to a company that was worth $9 billion and somebody that could continue a fraud and become a U.S. congressman. It just boggles the mind that this stuff has been able to take off. Now, speaking of frauds that might not be frauds, and we were also going to talk about this before because I really want to talk about this story. We ran out of time. Was Miss Universe rigged? Miss Universe, in case you don't know out there, and all the Filipinos that are watching, you've been hiding in a rock. Miss USA won the Miss Universe pageant, and she is part Filipino. Half Filipino, which is a pretty big deal for the Philippines to have someone, because the Philippines, beauty contests are a pretty big deal here.
Yes.
And so in these days here in the United States of people stealing elections, and if you don't win, you must have been cheated. So this is the new normal in the U.S. or in the world now. I mean, there's no way. The only way that I got beat was I was cheated. So right now in the Miss Universe pageant, a lot of beauty contestants are saying that. Hey, you know what? There's no way I could have been beaten. I must have been cheated. So that the Miss Universe they knew who the winner was before the contest even started, because the Miss Universe was won by Miss USA, who was from Texas. And during the Miss USA pageant, supposedly there are many contestants who knew the winner before the contest was over. And that's why when this particular woman won the contest, a lot of the beauty contestants in Miss USA walked off the stage and didn't congratulate her or anything. And the fact that they said, well, she didn't seem very excited when she won because she knew she won before the whole thing was over. So
these beauty pageants, sometimes we have our early favorites, right? So it's not just the judges. It's everyone watching. We have our early favorites. And there are a lot of reasons why, because they're beautiful, they're smart, they have got what it takes.
I mean, okay, all right. Let me just say, the woman that won, if she had been maybe not so good looking, or maybe she flubbed her answer, but that's not the case with this woman.
No,
I mean,
she is
this
legit.
woman is gorgeous. But I think the issue being is in the United States, there's a whole issue going on right now of the Miss USA pageant and the fact that the people that ran the Miss USA pageant that picked this woman and everybody said that they cheated, they are also the same group that oversaw the Miss Universe pageant in the United States. So they must have cheated again because the same woman won. And so therefore, there's something going on here, and so that's why there's all this stuff coming out now. The woman, this Filipino American woman, Arboni Gabrielle, she said that the competition was not rigged, and she would not be in a competition that was rigged. And I looked into this, Melissa. If you look at her background, I mean,
she is one amazing person.
She's not George Santos. I mean, for sure. And she has all the qualifications. She is gorgeous.
Did you know she made her own gown in the Miss Universe contest?
I don't doubt that.
Yeah, and that's to represent both her parents. It's a beautiful dress.
So all I can say is in the United States right now, if I don't win, I must have been cheated. This is the new thing, it kind of perpetuated through Donald Trump and the U.S. presidential election. But I have a feeling a lot of people and, a lot of countries are like, well, we have to look into this because, it's the same company that did this, that picked her as the winner before. It's the same company that... Okay, all right, fine. Look into it. But I just have to say that woman was pretty darn good looking and she gave very good answers. So I don't know.
She embodies beauty, substance, intellect.
All the stuff.
All the stuff that we need to have for Miss Universe.
Yeah, I know. So I don't want to say sore loser, but sore loser.
Yeah, because
anyway.
like in the Miss USA pageant, they said that they have a Viber group and almost everyone thinks that it's rigged. So it's one thing to think that it's rigged, and then it's another thing when you have the facts or when you have the proof.
I know.
But they don't have the proof, right?
I know. I mean, there's going to be an investigation, but, all right, let there be an investigation. Because the woman who was head of Miss USA was fired because of supposed misproprietary stuff that she did during the Miss USA. She was from Texas. The winner was from Texas. All these girls came. They said they knew ahead of time already. They were all discussing it, how the Miss Texas was going to win because she was buddies with it. She didn't have to show up to certain things because she was from Texas, because she was friends with the organizer. So there was a whole lot of things that went on during the Miss USA. So that's why everybody's got a reason now to say it was rigged. But I don't know. I still think that she won. But anyway, speaking of things that are not rigged, I have to say the Avengers movie Endgame, that's not rigged because that just made $2 billion this week. So we're at our entertainment segment here. So Avengers Endgame. Wait a minute. Avengers Endgame. Not.
They're showing it again.
Avatar. Yeah. What I was going to say was Avengers Endgame, Titanic, Star Wars, The Force Awakens. They all made the country of Bhutan. What do all these have in common? They all made $2 billion, which is what Avatar made so far that it's been out. That's what I was going to say. Avatar is now at the $2 billion mark.
Wow.
So that's a lot of money. That movie cost $460 million to make. So they have made their money back. Isn't it incredible how much movies make? It's just incredible.
Yeah, I guess people just also want an escape.
Yeah, I mean, people that say, well, we're not going to go to movies anymore because we can see everything at home. You know what? People still want to go to the movies. They still love to go to the movies. I love to go to the movies. It's just, there's something different about it.
It's different, yeah.
But I still think it's amazing. I remember back when True Lies came out, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, and it was worth it cost $100 million to make, and we were like, oh my God, what did that movie cost $100 million?
Is that with Jamie Lee Curtis?
Yeah, wow, that was a great movie back in the day. But Avatar, one of the interesting facts about Avatar, and I wrote these things because I thought that movie, I still haven't seen it, but I'm going to go see it soon. Have you seen it?
I've seen it. Yeah.
Don't tell me. Supposedly, James Cameron got the idea from the Bajo tribes in Indonesia. And it was shot on a Sony camera called the Venice that was made just for this movie. So there you go.
Really?
So, but moving over to things that are very scientific, I wanted to get to this other story because I wanted to hear your thoughts on the fact that in science this week, the Earth's inner core may have stopped.
And it's spinning.
Yeah, let me ask you this.
The other way now?
Yeah. Now, before this story came out, did you know that the Earth's inner core spun?
All I know is that the Earth's spinning on its axis. That's all I know.
I knew the Earth was spinning as it goes around because we have night and day, whatever. But I didn't know the Earth's inner core was spinning. Anyway, the scientists are saying that the Earth's inner core, which is made of metal, has stopped spinning, and the question is, the issue being, okay, so we have the Earth's crust, the Earth's mantle, the outer core, and the inner core. We have never seen the inner core. We don't have a sample of it. We can't even get to it. It's 5,000 kilometers below the surface. We know much more about outer space and millions of kilometers away from us than we do 5,000 kilometers down.
Yeah.
We still know very little about it. But there's an inner core. There's a ball of metal about the size of Pluto. So it's pretty big. Wow. Spinning Pluto, which used to be a planet, and it may be back to being a planet. I don't know. That's another story. But anyway, this ball is spinning inside the planet, and it may have stopped. And like you said, it may be going in reverse. Now, this took a decade for this to happen. It didn't happen right away. But in fact, they say some people believe it's a 7-decade cycle that the Earth goes through, but they're just guessing. They don't know for sure. I mean, in the 1950s, they didn't have stuff to go and look and see. But the big question is now that this thing might be going in the opposite direction or about to go in the opposite direction, is gravity going to disappear and we will all float away from the Earth and into outer space?
You want to? Yeah, that would be exciting to know.
Of all the things we think we have problems with, this could be a problem. But they say that might not happen. That's probably a good chance that will not. The electromagnetic stuff that keeps us on the Earth, keeping float away, will not be disrupted. But they say that things will happen on the Earth, such as the days may be shorter, which
because maybe it will affect the way the Earth rotates.
Yeah, I mean, here again, we are speculating just as much as I think they are sometimes. But they say that there may be slight changes in the length of the Earth's day. The sea levels will be affected. The global temperatures will will change slightly, which I thought was climate change. I thought that was climate change. Now it turns out it's the Earth spinning. So anyway, that is something that they came out something else to scare the crap out of us.
Is it doomsday?
Doomsday. What time is it now? 47. Yeah, because I wanted to get to this, but we're jumping ahead here about about doomsday. You know what? Before we get to doomsday, what time is it? We got 47 minutes. One thing I wanted to get to, which you might think of is something that's doom and gloom, is the newest health news that came out this week, which I had to just do a double take. I'm always looking at these health things and just going, oh, I can't believe that's happening now. So who's back in health news? Leprosy.
It's scary.
Who out there even knows
Bible,
what
it's really scary.
Who even knows what leprosy is? Leprosy was something you think, okay, that's what 1400 BC was when we think the first time they have leprosy, and they still don't know what leprosy really is about. It's a disease that affects the skin and the nerves and the mucous membranes. It's still a puzzle. And I thought leprosy was over because, remember back in the day when they had islands and they would send people to the islands.
Yeah,
the leprosy
they isolate them, put them all together.
Turns out you don't really need to do that.
I guess it's not as scary as before because now they have antibiotics to treat leprosy. They have things to treat it. However, they had 200,000 cases in Brazil. There are 200,000 cases a year of leprosy. Even in the United States. In Africa.
In the United States, there were 250 cases last year. India, Indonesia. In the stuff that I was researching, Africa actually did not come up. And the reason that they say, now, here again, I need to study a little bit more, but I thought it was really interesting is the reason that a lot of people get leprosy is from eating armadillos.
Oh. Because they're carriers.
They are carriers of, they say more than 60% of armadillos carry leprosy. And that hunters in a lot of these places, they will kill because it's a delicacy. They will kill them and they will eat them and then they will get the leprosy. And And so don't kill armadillos anyway because they're so cute. But they say that actually it could be that the armadillos, they believe that the armadillos actually got it originally from the Europeans that brought it to South America from Europe about 500 years ago. But anyway, I thought that was a very fascinating story in health because, we are going through a stage of recognizing disease now like we never have before, and recognizing that we are not the only living things on this planet. I mean, they still don't know exactly where the COVID disease came from, but they got a good idea. They got a really good idea that this came from some animal that we ate. And now, and it's like when I read this and I see people eating armadillos, which just seems insane, and that's part of the reason how they're getting leprosy now. So it's one of those things that we just have to think about now is what are we putting in our mouths? And we think that, okay, we can put anything in our mouth because, we're humans. We're at the top of the food chain. But there are things that we put in us that are not good for us. And it turns out armadillos are one of them.
Yeah, as for COVID, it was like the bats.
It was the bats. They still believe it's the bats.
They believe it's a bat.
The reason that they still believe it's the bats is because COVID's been around for a long time. It's just that this version of COVID is new. But they proved a long time ago that bats carry COVID. And as well as other weird, strange animals that live in China or in Brazil. So I think that's just an interesting health thing that I thought come up because I had not heard about leprosy. That's something you hear about like pre-World War II. I didn't even know people still got it, and they're still getting it. And people, speaking of leprosy, and this is not a very good segue, but Paris Hilton is back in the news again.
Why is Paris Hilton connected with leprosy?
Because I feel like I get leprosy. No, I'm just kidding.
You're allergic to.
I'm allergic to stories about Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton, who used to be in the news all the time for, I don't know, having a sex film. I don't know, what was her claim to fame? I mean, what was her talent? She wasn't really much of a singer.
She was a socialite.
She wasn't really much of an actor. She was just
Model.
Paris Hilton, and
but she was a trendsetter.
Yeah, she was a trendsetter. There you go. And, we had a Paris Hilton store in the mall where I lived, and I don't think I ever saw anybody in there. Anyway, Paris Hilton had a baby this week at 41 years old.
At 31.
41.
Oh, good for her. 41.
41. Paris Hilton's old. Yeah, she's been around for a while. Yeah, she's been around for a while. So anyway, Paris Hilton is having a baby. So I guess we can all be excited about that. I know that they wish that she was in China because China, as it turns out, is getting smaller because they are having less births now than they have ever had before. Turns out China had 850,000 less births than they had before. They still have 104 billion people, but they
have an aging population.
Aging population, and that people are not having kids like they used to. Now the problem with China, you would think, wait a minute, that's crazy because China has a law that says you can only have one child. And for a while in the 70s, they had too many people and they could not feed their population. And they realized at that point, the Communist Party was like, we can't feed all these people. What are we going to do? All right, everybody has one child and that's it. And if you have more than one child, then we will take your parents home. They had all kinds of crazy laws that kind of went with it. And then in 2016, they said, all right, that's enough of that. We don't have enough kids anymore. Let's drop that law. And then in 2020, they said, all right, you can have 2 kids. So,
but still, there's a lot of pressure now in the youth on how to sustain the old people.
Yeah, people are getting older and older and older. And, whereas, 50 50 years ago, they were living to be 55. Now they're living to be 80, 85. And, when you look at how the Communist Party has dealt with these situations, and now they are finding that their population is shrinking, and that people, and the problem that they have is, and they can see the writing on the wall, that in in 30 years from now, this could be a real problem in China.
It's going to be a real problem. Yeah.
And this is going to be a problem in the world. And this is a subject that we cannot do here at the end of the show. And we're going to have to bring this back next week, because this is something that is a subject that needs to be of concern around the world, that the world is shrinking. And this is something I wanted to talk about for a while this week, but we're gonna lead into it again next week, because I think it's a very fascinating discussion about population growth and how it is in the Philippines, and that's something that I really want to spend some time on.
Yeah.
About what is happening to the population in the Philippines now, and
overpopulation.
Yeah, the overpopulation, and what they think it's going to be, and so. The Philippines is doing okay. They're not out of time yet, like we are, because we are out of time because the show had just flown by today. We didn't get a chance to talk all the things we want to talk about. But next week we will spend a little bit of time on Filipino population and what is going and what they believe is going to happen. But for right now, me, Eric Lecain, here on the World News Jam, and Melissa, we will be.
See you guys. Thanks for watching.
Rosella. Rosella, our Iron Man here on the show. We will be back again next week to talk about more interesting stories going on around the world. So for now, for Eric here and Melissa, we will be back next week. Everybody, please be safe out there, and we will see